I'm a booktuber now. Hey there guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're brand new here, I don't normally talk about book content, but I have really picked up this new hobby. Starting in January of 2023 was the first set of books that I had bought since grade school, and I fell in love with reading again this year, and it was really fun. And I asked you guys if you would be interested in seeing the books that I had read this year, and to my utter amazement, a good chunk of y'all were actually interested in the books I had read this year. Now, there is a small portion of you that are just interested in my hair content and learning about wavy curly hair. So if that is you, no hard feelings, make sure you're subscribed and have that notification bell clicked, because we normally talk all things wavy curly hair. We're just taking a break and hanging out and doing books right now. Also, not gonna lie, I felt an immediate vulnerability and self-consciousness when I sat down to film this video, because my reading tastes feel really weird to me. The books I really enjoy, it feels kind of personal somehow, in a way that hair doesn't feel that personal to me. So take my book loves with a grain of salt. And also, I would like to thank Haley Pham for sparking my love of reading. Her willingness to share the books that she really enjoyed helped me figure out which books I really enjoyed, and turns out we actually kind of have similar taste in books. Not exactly the same, but very similar. So with that being said, I do want to tell you my all-time favorite 5-star read book that I have ever read. It is Out of the Silent Planet by C.S. Lewis. In fact, it's the first book in a whole trilogy that he has written that I feel like I don't hear anyone ever talking about. It's a science fiction space trilogy, fictional stories that he wrote that are so profoundly amazing that I think about them all the time. That's what dictates a 5-star book for me. If it's something that I think about after I've read it, I enjoy, heck, even go back and reread again. I have read those books more times than I can count. Out of the Silent Planet, Paralandra, and That Hideous Strength. That Hideous Strength gets a little weird at the end, but it's still really good. So that is the kind of books that I enjoy reading. I enjoy fantasy, I enjoy sci-fi, I enjoy kind of dropping out of reality for a little while to escape and be entertained. I must be entertained. I don't want to think. I don't want to have my mind stretched and bended. I don't want to grow as a human when I'm reading for fun. I grow as a human when I read my Bible. When I'm reading a book for entertainment, I just want it to be that. Thoroughly entertaining. Now, the first few books I read in January of 2023, I don't have the copy still. I loaned them to friends and or returned them, and you'll see why in a minute. But the first book I read was Beach Read. It's a light romance novel written by Emily Henry, and while I did enjoy the story, it felt really predictable to me. Maybe that's all romance novels. I haven't read just a whole lot of romance because I found out that I don't love it. It's not my thing. So while I did enjoy this book, I don't ever think about it. I can barely remember the story, and it's gonna get a 3 out of 5 stars for me. The next book I read was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I feel like everyone read this book this year, and somehow I didn't know when I picked up this book that it was like adult book. There was going to be spice in it. I was not prepared. Don't ask me how I was not prepared. I just wasn't. Somehow I missed that. I'm reading along and thoroughly enjoying the story. About halfway through the book takes a turn and it becomes so predictable. Like, I knew exactly what was gonna happen. Chapters before it happened, I could predict literally everything, and honestly got really bored at the second half of this book. I know that so many people, like, this is their favorite book of all time. I am so glad that you love this book as much as you do. I personally feel like it really fell flat in the second half. I really fell in love with the world that she had built, but as the characters' stories played out in this world. So A Court of Thorns and Roses, I give 2 stars. 2 stars. I was really frustrated with how the story played out. That feels really harsh because it's so many people's 5-star read, but that's just kind of where that book landed for me. Next, I read Cheat Sheet. Or should I say, I started it. Got about halfway through it and I DNF'd it. I did not finish. It was really predictable, it was really sweet, it was really warm and fuzzy and cuddly. I believe this is young adult, so no spice, which is quite nice, but I found myself being incredibly bored as I read it. And that is probably just because I'm not big into romance novels. I discovered that that's not the genre that I adore. Next we have Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I loved this. This was so good. The only thing I'm not loving is that it is a villain as the romance interest in the book, and that's my only drawback to the book, but it's a delightful fantasy that's really, really whimsical and fun. It feels a bit Alice in Wonderland, but kind of lighter and fluffier and pretty and colorful. As I read this book, I felt like I had dropped into this world and I was immersed in it and I really enjoyed it. I give Once Upon a Broken Heart 4 stars. It was really good. I sometimes think about the characters. I could see myself rereading this book at some point in the future, but I don't feel the burning desire to do so and or think about this book on a daily basis. So that's why it's not 5 stars, but it's definite 4-star read for me. Which means that I absolutely picked up the second book, The Ballad of Never After, and I didn't love this one as much as I enjoyed the first one. I liked how the story progressed. I was entertained as I read it, but there were some vampires in here and I'm realizing that I don't love super dark stuff. The vampires in this book felt a little dark to me and it wasn't my favorite, which means that I didn't necessarily pick up the third book and read it. So there are 3 books in this series. I've only read the first 2. I enjoyed the second one and I did finish it, but I didn't feel the deep burning desire to finish the series. Ballad of Never After bumps down a bit for me. It's 3.75 stars just because of the dark bits that kind of seeped into the book. It started off so like fuzzy and fluffy and bubbly and colorful and warm, and then it just kind of got dark. So 3.75. Next, I read The Last Thing I Remember by Andrew Clavin. When I picked this up, I didn't realize that it was like a teen book, that it was for young teen boys. That being said, it was an insanely fast read, very vivid action scenes. I was entertained while I read it, but it ended on a major cliffhanger. The question that the book opened with was not answered at the end, and I love me some closure. I need the story to wrap up in a nice, pretty, neat little bow. So Last Thing I Remember does not do that. It is the first book in a series, and if I wanted the closure, I'm sure I could continue the series and seek out that closure, but the writing was not targeted to me as a reader because I am not a teenage boy. So I did not continue the series, but I did enjoy that book while I read it. Next, I started Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow. As I was reading this book, I know so many people love this book. This book was breaking my heart as I was reading it. It's the story of 2 people who design video games together, and that's really fascinating. I love the story as it started out, but as I read it, I could tell that it was not going to end happy. And I cannot stand that. I need a book to end happy. That's why I'm reading. I don't want to read to be sad and feel things. I want to read to be entertained and be happy. So I need the book to wrap up well, and I'm not gonna lie, I got about halfway through and then I flipped to the very back and read a few pages and realized where the book was going, so I did not finish it because I didn't feel like having my heart broken. There's a chance I may pick this up someday and finish reading it. It It was interesting, but it was making me feel all the feels, and I don't want to feel all the feels. I feel all the feels in my day life. I need to drop out of real reality and into some fun book for a little bit. That's why I read. So this was no for me. So getting away from that, I went into this series, The Cruel Prince, The Queen of Nothing, and The Wicked King by Holly Black. This was fun. This was a little dark. It was kind of gothic, kind of gory, but no spice, and really entertaining world, glorious magical creatures, a lot of politics, like the king's court kind of politics, and grabs for power and rises to victory. I was so entertained as I was reading these. It was a tad bit dark, but every book wrapped up in a way that made me happy. And I like cheered at the end of each of these books. So for this series, I'm gonna give the whole series like a 4.25. There wasn't a book that stood out to me as being so much better than the others, but reading them all together collectively, definitely really enjoyed. I could absolutely see myself reading them again. They definitely don't get 5 stars for me because tad bit dark, I guess. I still enjoyed it. Then I read Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Peterson, and first 5-star book of the year. I loved this story so much. This is awesome. 5 stars, 5, maybe 6. I love it that much. It's the story of an orphan girl who survives by being a thief living on the streets, and it is a romance story, but it's no spice. The romance story, like the way it builds, the love interest that she has in this book is just perfect. They have to battle together, like, love it. Love it so much. The second book is a 4.75. I really liked the sequel to The Dance of Thieves, The Vow of Thieves. My only problem is that I got a tad bored reading this one. So somewhere in the middle, it kind of drug on a bit. I felt like I was just kind of waiting for the story to progress, but the way it wrapped up, the way they win in the end, spoiler alert, they win in the end. That's why Courtney loves these books so much, because there's a really good happy ending. Absolutely read these. Really deeply enjoyed it. Highly recommend. Next, we have the Shadow and Bone series. Did my dog get a hold of my Shadow and Bone copy? Why, yes. Yes, he did. And tore the front cover off. That being said, I loved this series. The Grishaverse? I am feeling the Grishaverse. In case you didn't know, because I didn't, a Grisha is someone with magical powers, a human that can do cool stuff. And you follow the story of Alina and all the stuff she does. It was an absolutely awesome tale, no spice, and the romance in it was really sweet and good. I didn't know where the books were gonna go, like where the story was going to take me, and I just enjoyed being taken for the ride. It did not disappoint, it did not make me sad, and I was thoroughly entertained. So these get a 4.5 out of 5 stars for me. Really, really loved these. Apparently, I'm a fantasy girly. Like, I love me some good fantasy, because the next book I read was the same book everybody else read this year, Fourth Wing. I don't have a copy of it because a friend actually loaned me her copy to read. That was the first book that I have read ever that I literally was frustrated that I had other things to do during the day other than sit and read. So like when I had to get up and go do work and other chores, I was irritated because I would rather be sitting down reading Fourth Wing. It was so entertaining. It is an adult book, so there are some pages that I personally just flipped past. The story was incredible. It follows a girl named Violet. There's dragons involved. The romance is, I love her love interest character, Xaden. He's definitely a bad boy villain turned awesome. Their story is really, really fun. Fourth Wing was definitely worth the read to me. I'm gonna give that one 4.75 stars. It was amazing. Which leads me to the last book that I read in 2023, which is Iron Flame, the sequel to Fourth Wing. Did I pre-order this the instant I finished Fourth Wing? Why, yes, I did. I didn't love it as much as I loved Fourth Wing. I loved the world in Fourth Wing. I envisioned myself being a dragon rider, and I appreciate where the story is going with this book. The first half of this book was hard to get through. It took me probably 2 months to read this book. As you can see, I'm not a crazy high volume reader. I don't read 90 books in a year. It takes me an entire year to read like 20. But I am still impressed that I read that many. As someone who went from reading 0 books, I now read this many, so that's kind of cool. Any hoozles. 2 months to get through this book because, one, it was just really dragging. I did not understand some of the plot twists. I was very befuddled at the choices of how the story progressed. It is really hard to not give spoilers and describe what's going on in a book. I now have a deep admiration for BookTube and BookTok because they do such a good job of describing stories and making me feel like I desperately want to read them without telling me any spoilers. That's an art form. You go, BookTubers. I'm not a BookTuber. First half was really slow and it did start to pick up, and towards the end I loved the flow and was like, yes, this feels like Fourth Wing again. I love this world. This is going perfect. I'm adoring this. And then there's a twist right at the end that everybody hates. Thankfully, I was aware that there was going to be a major twist that was going to upset me because I had seen other people talk about this book. So when it hit, I wasn't as devastated as I should have been. And I think I've already figured out how they're gonna get out of it, how they're gonna resolve the twist that happened right at the end of the book. So I'm not too worried. At this point, I trust Rebecca Yarros. I feel like she's going to fix the situation that she created at the very end of this book, but I really enjoy the characters and the world that she built. So this one's gonna get a 4 stars from me. It's not amazingly epic, but I still wildly enjoyed reading it. And I will 100% be reading the next book that she comes out with. Also, this is an adult book. There is some spice. There are some pages that you flip past, and that's fine. And that is it, guys. Those are all the books that I have read in 2023. I'm excited for 2024 and the reading. This has been an incredibly relaxing and awesome new hobby that I've been deeply enjoying. These fantasy novels. I never would have thought that I would have gotten into reading fantasy, but I sure have. Absolutely love it. The next series that I started is Red Rising. I'm enjoying it. I am about halfway through the first book. I'm intrigued. I'm entertained. I'm not loving it as deeply as I've loved some other books, but I haven't finished the book, so I can't give my final thoughts on that. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me here on the internet. I am deeply grateful for each and every single one of y'all. Y'all are really special to me, and I am just so grateful for you. As always, I sure hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!